Welcome, everybody, to another episode of On the Range podcast with War HOGG Tactical and Kelley Defense. How's it going today, Rick?
Man, Mark, it's going great. Just want to thank the viewers, listeners out there for giving us your most precious commodity, your time to tune in. Appreciate all your support. We are now in the top 3% of all podcasts globally, and we could not do that without you. Just ask your continued support. Please press that subscribe button. Make sure you go ahead and leave us a rating and review. Even if it's just a thumbs up emoji, it will definitely help get our reach out there. But thank you guys for tuning in.
Yeah, buddy. Wherever you're at today, thank you for making us part of it. And today's episode is brought to you by Killcliff. Please visit killcliff.com. Go ahead and use the promo code OTR15. Save yourself 15%. It's a boatload of cash. Get yourself some badass energy drinks with ingredients that do not suck. They are fueling the American dream and supporting the Navy SEAL Foundation, and they have been for the last 10 years. So hats off to them. Also, big thanks to Combat Flip Flops. CombatFlipFlops.com. Use the promo code OTR25. 25% off your total purchase. Go support Combat Flip Flops. They're doing a lot of great outreach as well. It's a veteran-owned company, just great guys. Happy to have them on board. Well, today, Rick, we have a really neat show, really cool show. Super excited about it. And our guest today is Shannon Cofield. She is a Navy veteran, a geologist, a oceanographer. Oh, and she's a PhD candidate. And by the way, she's mapping Mars. So we got a lot going on, and super excited that you were able to join us today and give us some of your time. So thanks for your service, and thank you for being here.
You bet. Thanks for having me, and cheers.
Oh, she's busting out the kill cliff. Good for her. Yeah. I'm empty-handed. I got nothing. But yeah, really, really glad that you're here today. I've got a lot of questions, and I'm sure the viewers and the listeners will tune in as well. Now, we were talking a little bit before the show started, and we kind of cut you off because we want to hear more about it and the PhD process and things like that. I know you're a candidate. And what is your project? What are you doing to reach that to completion?
Sure. So I'm actually a geologist, and I'm trained as an oceanographer. So a geological oceanographer. And to be more specific, I'm a sedimentologist. So I look at when you take big rocks and you bust them up into little fragments, I basically look at sand. So I look at sand that's up in the Arctic, kind of like around the Arctic Ocean, and that sand gets kind of scraped up by glacial ice, and then that glacial ice pops into the Arctic Ocean. It kind of does a little circle around the ocean, pops out to where, you know, the Titanic sunk in the North Atlantic, and that ice drops that sand down to the ocean floor. We go down and we take a sample of that, and we're able to look at those grains and kind of tie them back to where they came from, wherever around the Arctic and that land. So it's kind of like a trace around. And we do that back into time. So we do that back into the last glacial periods when there was a lot of ice basically covering all of Canada and, you know, through like the northern part of North America. We look at those last 3 glacial periods. Okay, cool. Like, who cares, right? That's like such nerdy science. Well, it gives us an idea of what was going on in the environment when you had drastic climate changes, glacial cycles, right? CO2 levels were really low. It's a lot different than today. So if we can kind of understand the past, we can maybe get a little bit of a grasp on the future. So that's the main part of the PhD. That's the really nerdy stuff.
Okay. And how's that going to help us in the future?
Again, if we can just, sorry, the shadow is like the sun is creeping up. So you guys can only see like my Spike's canine here.
There you go.
As long as we can get a better idea of how all these, we call them feedback loops, right? So if you take all the sea ice is white, right? The ocean from satellite imagery is blue, right? It's dark. So if you have a lot of white sea ice, the sun rays come in and they reflect. And you don't get a lot of what we call heat transfer. We don't get a lot of absorption of that sunlight, that heat into the oceans. Oceans stay a pretty normal temperature. Well, if you start getting rid of all that sea ice, AKA warm up the climate, which is kind of what's happening right now, that sea ice goes away. Now you've got a dark ocean, which is just going to soak up all those sun rays. And that is what we call a feedback loop, where it's getting warmer, the sea ice is going away, and now the sun rays are being absorbed. It's getting even warmer. So it's building on each other. So there's a lot of feedback loops in the environment. We don't fully understand probably 40% of them is what we know right now. I mean, it's so complicated. So I'm just doing a small piece of that puzzle. And if we can kind of decode that part, we can apply it to all the other pieces of the puzzle and maybe get a better idea.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And the Arctic is really sensitive. It's probably the most sensitive part on Earth to changes or fluctuations in overall climate. So it's a good place to do some research.
Have you actually been down there, I'm guessing?
I haven't. My colleagues have done Antarctica, which is cool because you'll be on the ice, right? Antarctica doesn't have polar bears, but they have penguins.
Okay.
And you'll be on the ice and this like army, this wall of emperor penguins will like come over the horizon toward you. They'll check you out and then they'll just like haul away. But the Arctic has my area that I would have actually gone to collect my samples. They do have polar bears. So like when you leave the campus, you have to have, big rifles with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are big bears. I wouldn't want to see one in real life.
So Shannon, when you're going out to get your samples, basically what I'm taking, are you coring into the ice there to pull samples out that way? And like how far do you have to go down, or how much material do you need to recover to kind of get a good idea of what's going on?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So like the majority of my samples actually come from taking a ship and we put a big air gun on the side of the ship and we shoot a core down all the way to the seabed and we get a sediment core. But we also have on the cruise that collected my samples, we had Swedish pilots because they're the only ones that would do this. So the ship is in the middle of ice. It's breaking through ice, which is a whole challenge in itself. And then the Swedish pilots would fly off the deck of the ship, touch down on the sea ice, and then the researchers could grab samples, literally grab them with their hands off of the ice. So you're getting a mix of samples from the ice and then also really deep sea sediment cores.
And you can tell how old they are too, right?
Yep. You can do all sorts of radio ice. Oh gosh, I'm gonna get really nerdy. I'm not gonna explain it, but I'm just gonna say a nerdy word, so beware.
Yeah.
Radio isotope dating. So you can do dating like that. You can do radiocarbon dating on the little dudes that live at the bottom of the ocean. There are ways to do it. It's complicated, but there's ways to do it.
And what's the oldest sample that you've ever come across?
Arctic is not going to be quite as dramatic as most samples. So my samples go back about 300,000 years. Okay. But I guess to a non-geologist, that's really old. To a geologist, you say like maybe 4 billion years. I'm like, ooh, that's old.
Yeah.
4 billion.
Wow.
Yeah.
So being a geologist, how old is the Earth? Oh no.
About 4.8, 4.9 billion is our best estimate. Yeah. Wow. And then life originated, according to science and our research, about 4.6 billion years ago. And that's just little, and I'm saying that for a reason. That's little single-celled, bacteria, cyanobacteria organisms, but that's going to tie into Mars when we talk about Mars later.
Wow.
Let's talk about it now since you fired that one up. I mean,
yeah, because that's a pretty big leap from Oceanographer to Mars.
How we getting to Mars? Let's hear about this one.
So if anybody's listening and they're curious how you go from a Navy veteran to a geological oceanographer to Mars, I was literally at a conference and I was listening to a talk on geology of Mars, and I found out that all the geologists that research Mars do is they apply what they know from Earth to Mars, right? We can't go to Mars yet. I mean, as much as a geologist would love to and pick up a rock, we can't do that yet. That's why we've got rovers up there. So I asked somebody that was giving a presentation, hey, how can I get involved in this? How can I do research? And he said, hey, why don't you come out to this little place in California called NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab? And I was like,
yeah,
oh, okay. So I did an internship with them, and then, I was already a PhD student. I was a little bit older. I'd already been done my time in the Navy. So I knew to take advantage of that opportunity, and I kept rolling with that. And I got put on a couple different teams. I was on the NASA's Curiosity rover, which is currently on Mars. I was on that team first, and I helped map the area that rover's kind of trawling around in right now. And then I got switched over to the Mars 2020 rover, which is now renamed the Perseverance rover. And I was on that team before it had launched, and we hadn't even picked a landing site yet. And there were 3 final landing sites, and I was on one of the teams kind of advocating for it, and we did a lot of workshops and stuff, and I helped map this landing site called Jezero Crater, and then went to the landing site meeting, and we did all of our presentations, and NASA headquarters selected our site.
That's pretty cool.
So I basically
and what was
helped
your reason?
map. Oh, okay. So Jezero Crater is actually super cool. So it's a crater, but if you're familiar with the Mississippi River is like super kind of muddy looking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most people would think it's pollution, but what all that brown color is it's sediment, right? It's mud and clays and stuff that are being carried away all the way down to where it exits into the Gulf of Mexico. Once the river exits, it kind of deposits all of that gunk, all that sand and mud and silt into a big, it looks like a fan. And you can see it from space. It looks like a big bird foot coming off the Mississippi River. That's called a delta. Not to be confused with the Delta variant. We're not talking about that right now. We're talking about an actual river delta. And that's what Jezero Crater has, a perfectly preserved river delta. Okay, who cares? I mean, you can see it from satellite imagery really easily. It looks cool. But what's really cool about a delta is think about the Mississippi River again. Think about all the life that lives along the Mississippi River. All those little fish eggs and bacteria and whatever, as they die, they're also being carried down and they're being deposited into that delta. So the whole purpose of this mission was to test a couple technology instruments and do some cool stuff to kind of help, keep progressing planetary exploration. But number one was to look for signs of ancient life, right?
Yeah.
So is that kind of the assumption then, by going to that point, is potentially at some point Mars had an atmosphere or conditions that would support water on the planet? Obviously, this looks like the delta similar to Mississippi. So we're making the assumption potentially something was there.
Potentially. If there was ever life on Mars, it could be preserved in that delta. And spoiler alert, it's not going to be dinosaur bones. As cool as that would be, we're not going to find woolly mammoths or T-Rex on Mars.
You just ruined my entire day.
I know, I'm sorry. I can't say that for sure though, right? As a good scientist, maybe if you dig down deep enough, you'll find some crazy stuff. But
sure,
there's bacteria everywhere. There's bacteria all over the moon. There's bacteria that can live in space. They're called extremophiles. Honestly, I just hope we find it. Like, let's just find it and move on. Okay, there's bacteria on Mars. There's bacteria on other planets. Let's just move on, right? Like, let's get to some bigger stuff.
Yeah.
So
but that is pretty big though. Yeah, I was going to say that is pretty big. What else would be bigger?
What would be some big stuff?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So there are some moons around some other planets. Saturn and Jupiter have a couple moons that have some really interesting features. One of these moons potentially has an ocean on it that's actually bigger than our ocean, but it's got a layer of ice kind of protecting it from all the radiation from the sun. And it's got plate tectonics, so you've got stuff moving, you've got chemicals moving, you've got heat. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah.
A whole planet with an ocean and no life in it, I find that hard to believe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just waiting. That's waiting and lurking.
So speaking about Mars, everybody remembers back in the day when the face and the bowl with the ball in it and all these crazy photos.
Yep.
I mean, is there any validity at all to any of that stuff? I mean, you can pretty much see anything in any kind of abstract, photo. Yep.
No joke. It's my favorite. It is my favorite because people send me DMs all the time and they're like, hey, Shannon, can you just look at this? In case you didn't know, NASA puts up, because it's taxpayer money, right? NASA puts up all of the raw images from the rovers or any spacecraft. I think it's within 24 hours. So people will sit on NASA's website and they'll watch these pictures come in and they'll look at it and they'll go, oh my gosh, I see a person, or I see this, or I see a turtle, or Shannon, is this a turtle? I'm like, dude, it's a rock. It's a rock. You're literally looking at rocks.
Yeah.
So no, unfortunately, but it would be cool. It'd be really cool if we found something. I will say, when I was first mapping Jezero Crater, we map at really, really high resolution. So we make our maps at 1 to 500, which most maps are normally made at like 1 to, like land nav maps, right? For like military, or like 1 to 70,000. So we're mapping on satellite imagery, of course, but we're mapping off of a camera called HiRise, and it has, I think, 22 centimeters per pixel resolution.
Oh my gosh.
So you can zoom in and literally see grains of sand, and that's kind of how we map. But I saw a couple things that I was like, ooh, that doesn't look natural.
Yeah.
And I kind of flagged them, and, turned out to be just some weird geologic process. But you can definitely get tricked. You can see things. So, hey, you know what though? More power to people. If you want to look at the NASA images, at least someone's looking at them, right?
Yeah.
Valid point. I mean, who knows how many gazillions of dollars that's costing, but go check out the images,
Oh God, I'd hate to see the spreadsheet on that budget.
I'll tell you, the most stressed I have been during the pandemic, the most stressed I've been was not necessarily when it launched, but when we were getting ready to land. And if you haven't seen the footage from the landing, I know it's like everybody is so used to getting things right away and getting all the, the media and stuff right away, but it's the first time that we actually have video of the landing. And it's a very complicated landing system where the rover parachutes down, and then it kind of hovers, and there's this crane thing that lowers it, and then it cuts the cables and it zooms off. It looks like sci-fi. And I can't believe nobody was like, hey, that's fake. That doesn't look real. But we got video of it. It's so cool. But the most stressed I've been was during that landing, because I was like, this is a movie right now. If we crash into Mars, right, and there's a 7-minute delay, we call it the 7 minutes of terror, when just because of the distance of the planets and the radio comms, there's a chance that we crash a $2 billion taxpayer rover into another planet during a pandemic. Like, we would be done.
Yeah.
So luckily, it was all beautiful and everything went out without a hitch.
Now that landed this year, correct? Earlier this year. Yeah.
Yep. It was a belated Valentine's Day present for us.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now there was some. Go ahead, buddy.
I was just going to ask, did it plant an American flag?
Well,
that's a great question. That's a good question, buddy.
It
It kind of goes with our history.
It didn't, but it's got all sorts of little Easter egg nuggets kind of hidden all over it. But I got to go back to the Curiosity rover, because you guys are going to get such a kick out of this story. You'll love this. It kind of goes with the USA thing and planting a USA flag. So the Curiosity rover is still on Mars, and that was the one that that launched back in, I'm going to get my dates wrong, 2006, I think. And anyway, it's still on Mars. It lands, right? It starts roving, driving away. You get these beautiful pictures of the tracks, right? Because Mars has a lot of dust in it. So you could see these tracks from the rover. And NASA HQ kind of looks at the tracks and goes, that looks weird. What's going on there? And the engineering team, who I actually know because I've worked at JPL, they had to put holes in the wheels, because otherwise the powder, that dust would stick. And they were finding in tests that sticking would cause the wheels to eventually come to failure. Mm-hmm. So NASA HQ gets them in a room and goes, hey guys, what's the deal with the holes? They look like they're trying to say something. And the engineers were like, ooh. Make a long story short, they had put Morse code in the tires to say JPL. So the rover is driving all over Mars and it's writing JPL.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
nice.
You mentioned those, was that something we learned from, you remember the vehicle that they had on the moon, where they did not install fenders, and it ended up causing an immediate problem. So they repurposed some materials and made fenders that was able to solve that. Was that something learned from that, or?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Everything builds on each other. There was a little teeny tiny rover called Sojourner. That was the first rover on Mars. And then it was meant to run for like a day or a week or something. And it did its job. And then there were the two, Opportunity and Spirit. Those were the solar powered ones. What's wrong with solar powered on Mars? It's a dusty planet. What happens when you get dust on your solar panels?
Yeah.
I mean, that, and those rovers did.
No wiper that sits there and cleans them off.
Nope. Moving
See
parts,
that?
right? Engineers don't like moving parts. It's
Dude,
so many moving parts.
Rain-X missed the mark on that one. You talk
I
about
know.
marketing.
I know that
They should have had the rover designed to look like one of those big monster trucks with one of those big American flags hanging off the back that you see muscling up and down Bragg Boulevard. That's what we need.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
That's what we
every
need.
so
You want to
often,
get some support
he's
behind
just
it.
planting one on the ground. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Yeah,
boom,
every 10 feet. Every 10 feet, there's a flag going in there. Yeah.
They're doing survey work, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So speaking of the moon.
Yes,
so
let's talk about the moon.
I'm going to go out on a limb a little bit.
Okay.
Isn't it like 271,000 feet exactly away from the Earth? Something like that. Okay.
Sure.
What about all this artificial moon stuff? You know what I'm talking about? The whole ancient alien kind of deal. And the reason I say that is because this planet, it's got to be some kind of an anomaly that we have this much life, and the moon is a big part of that.
Yep.
And if it wasn't for the perfect position and the perfect orbit and the tides and all these things, we wouldn't be here.
Yep.
Do you subscribe to any measure of all that is not chance?
Well, so we actually, in the science community, we call that the Goldilocks zone. It actually has its own name, the distance of a planet away from its own sun or suns, and then, its ability to possibly have our form of life, right? Carbon-based life. Life doesn't have to be carbon-based. It could be silica-based. It could be something totally different that we're not looking for. But I'm about to get not super sciencey on you, but I might kind of, open your eyes a little bit. So if you go on NASA JPL's website and you look up exoplanets, they actually have a clock that's ticking, and it's the amount of exoplanets that we've discovered, and they classify them as exoplanet is just a fancy word for a really far away planet that we can only detect through, fancy telescopes and stuff, Hubble and such. But they've divided it up so that the public can understand it a little bit better. And there's one category on there that's called terrestrial planets. And those would be, for the most part, planets that are like in our Goldilocks zone, but in other solar systems. Maybe, okay. I can't say if it's in other galaxies or not. I'm not sure if we can look beyond. I don't know. People have to look it up if they really want to nuke out on that. DM me and I'll figure it out for you. But there's a lot. There's a lot of, we call them Earth-like planets. And it's not to say that we have a picture of a planet that's got trees all over it in some other solar system, but we have evidence that there are planets that lie in that Goldilocks zone in a number, and I'm talking I think it's in the thousands, number of other solar systems. So, I mean, yeah, it's a very slim chance, and here's the other kicker that I don't think a lot of people that don't think in geologic time think about. Let's say there is a solar system next to us, and let's say it has an Earth-like planet, right? What did we just say? Our planet was about 4.8 billion years old. What if that planet, the way that we saw it, was only 4.1 billion? It was 4.1 billion years ago. In other words, we could be looking at a planet that life hasn't evolved on it yet, right? Or maybe we see a planet that's got dinosaurs on it.
Yeah.
We might be seeing a different snapshot of geologic time on these other planets. It's so slim to be able to find, everything's so spread out. It's so slim to be able to find it. And then, to have our planet and have life, I mean. Yeah.
Well, 4.8, 4.9 billion years. And then the amount of time that our civilization has been there, you blink an eye, that isn't even quick, not even close to being fast enough to even measure how short of a time period that is.
Yep.
So let me ask you this. Is there any, I don't want to get too crazy here, but you see,
get crazy.
I don't think people understand the type of energy that, and this is only energy that we know that it takes just to get from, here to the moon.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
So when you hear folks, kind of saying, hey, aliens and all this other stuff, obviously they're trying to say that, just like what you did, that this planet, it could be, in its infancy, or it could be twice as old as us.
Sure. Yep.
So what do you say to folks like that?
And I'll tell you what, as a scientist, I try to be a true pure scientist, which means I'm unbiased, right? I love hearing other people's kind of take on things. And as people are talking through stuff, I'll realize that they've maybe have some flawed assumptions, and that's kind of where they're going, like, people that are thinking, flat Earth and Earth is sitting on a turtle, and but I love to hear it because I just love to hear where people's brains go. So I don't know. That's kind of a weird one, huh?
Mm.
But you're saying Earth isn't flat?
Oh man, that's how
flat.
satellites work. They need a sphere. They can't. Gravity and satellites don't work on a plate.
You can spin a pizza box on your finger. Yeah, I'm saying.
Is that what they say?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's my favorite to talk about with them.
So the curiosity and the perseverance, you see videos that come out, like you said, it's available for everybody. And there was a few videos that came out where they had sound. Do you remember those several months ago? I don't know if you saw those. And do you guys hear sounds, from the rovers and all that stuff?
Yeah, Perseverance, I believe, has a microphone on it. Curiosity did not, but what sounds you're hearing was from a lander called InSight. And that wasn't a rover, it just landed, but its job was geophysics. Its job was to detect if there were earthquakes on Mars. Marsquakes, we call them Marsquakes. Oh, and also a day on Mars is called a sol, because
Sol?
Yeah, SOL, because eventually we'll have humans. Gosh, can you believe this? Eventually we'll have humans living up there on Mars, and we just need to think about it. You're going to have kids that are born on Mars, and what's a birthday going to be for them? How long is one Mars year? It's 2 of ours.
Wow.
So think about all those. I love thinking about like those social complexities of being an interplanetary species, which it's not going to happen in my lifetime, but it's going to happen at some point. I mean, that's where we're going. We're going to the moon, going back to the moon. It's that whole portion of it. I mean, I certainly don't study that, but that whole portion of it's really interesting. But yeah, the sounds, that was InSight. So we were hearing the wind.
Yeah. So what's the whole purpose of just say going to Mars and setting something up there? What would be the purpose for us, or the gain, I should say?
Oh, like why does anybody care?
Yeah.
That's what my PhD committee says. Tell me in English, why does the public care? Mm-hmm. Well, the Marsquakes are really interesting because if we can detect quakes, right, Mars quakes, then we have a really good idea of what's going on inside the planet. Meaning like plate tectonics, meaning like, is there stuff, are the plates moving? Are there volcanoes? There's huge volcanoes that are on Mars, largest one in the whole solar system, but it's extinct. Mm-hmm. It's like Mars kind of came to life. And interestingly enough, Mars actually came to life the same time Earth did. We're about the same age, but this, like the time period that life took off on Earth, Mars kind of died, which is interesting. And Mars is a little bit smaller. It's got about an 80% gravity. But why does the plate tectonics matter? The plate tectonics matter because what's going on deep in the core of a planet dictates if there's a magnetic field. And if we're going to put humans on Mars, we kind of need a magnetic field. If not, we need to build some really, really strong infrastructure that can protect us from all that radiation coming from the sun. So that's problem number one, right? But that as far as the quakes on Mars, that's the big ticket item for us. It's just to understand what's going on inside the planet.
And we talked earlier about the amount of energy it takes just to get from here to the moon or whatever. I mean, speaking about energy, what do you guys think in NASA about the whole space tourism deal?
Oh my goodness.
I mean, that's a thing. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's a thing. We've got a couple billionaires that are doing it. And is that a positive thing for you guys? Are they coming up with technologies and ways of doing it? Are they sharing that with you, vice versa? Are you helping them do this?
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of pushback. I mean, there was pushback against, we have these things called small sats, which are little teeny tiny satellites. And, anybody can launch them. They're like $20,000 if even. So like universities are launching them and stuff. And they're only meant to survive in space and collect whatever data they want to collect for a couple months, and then they die. Well, what's the problem with that? We got a lot of debris in space.
Mm-hmm.
And all that debris is orbiting the Earth at 17,000 miles per hour. And if you're an astronaut doing a spacewalk and you get hit by a piece of plastic at 17,000 miles per hour, you got a hole going through your body. So the space debris, and then the space debris now is starting to rain down on us. So that's a problem. And that was kind of initial issue with NASA. I think as these private companies have kind of been doing technology demonstrations and kind of proving that, hey, we could be a partner. Like NASA, you guys are taxpayer money. You've got money, but like you don't have DoD money. You know, like you don't have the amount of money that we need to go to Mars or to go to the moon and establish these bases, these research labs. You need other countries. You need private sector that's got a lot of money. So I think the tides have turned. And I think people are well, I know for sure people are collaborative because if you guys didn't know, they're building a new space station. Surprise. No. They're building a new space station, and it's going to be around the moon, and it's called the Gateway, and it's an international effort because it's extremely expensive. So it's not just NASA. It's all sorts of international space agencies, but it's also private sector. And that space station is going to orbit the moon on a huge elliptical. The problem with our space station is you still have a little bit of gravity, right? Because it's orbiting the Earth. So we don't truly know what zero gravity is going to do to the human body. So if we can build something a little bit further out around the moon would be great, because then we can kind of shuttle down to the moon and pop back up. We can do tests, we can do research, and then we've got a base for astronauts rather than having to build a base on the moon right away. But yeah, that's a huge effort with a lot of different private sector companies. Yeah, the space tourism thing. I mean, would you guys go? Would you do it if you knew you could come back? Would you do it?
Oh, you can come back. It might just be at 300 and some odd thousand miles an hour. I don't know. I don't know. Now count me out.
But it's kind of like what are you getting out of it? Are you just going into orbit? So let's put it this way. Are you doing a John Glenn? And again, nothing against John Glenn. Or are you doing a Neil Armstrong? I mean, is the easiest way to kind of compare it. Like what is the purpose?
Right.
Or
right.
Are you truly getting into space, or are you doing something right at the verge of space? You know, are you exiting the vehicle? Are you staying strapped in? So to me, the whole space exploration hasn't really been explained the way I know it. And then
I guess it depends if you buy the economy ticket or you buy the first class.
Can you imagine how much a pillow is on those flights?
Oh,
that'll be an extra $50,000.
But here's one for you, right? So look at Felix Baumgartner. He goes up to 120 some odd thousand feet above, bails out of his Red Bull wagon there and says, "Hey, I'm out." But that's right there. I mean, did he not do space travel? Right there at the fringe. Right there at the fringe, right?
They actually, it's funny because Blue Origin and was it SpaceX? I might be getting these wrong because I'm got so many private sector companies on my mind right now. But they just did the test flights. Oh gosh, which one was it? Anyway, and they had this big argument about when is space, and it's this thing called the Kármán line. Whatever, it's like 80 kilometers to 100 kilometers above the surface of the Earth, and like. Both vehicles were very different. One was a vehicle strapped to another plane and it got towed up and then it got released and it kind of like shoots up and comes down. The other one was the traditional, that was Bezos spacecraft, where you just rocket launch up, go into space, and then keep your fingers crossed that you don't burn up. Re-entry through the atmosphere, that's the part that makes me nervous. But man, I mean, wouldn't you guys want to at least launch?
Yeah, I don't know.
But again, it's are you going for a joyride, for lack of better terms?
Exactly.
How much is a ticket?
Yeah.
What's a ticket on?
Couple million right now, but they're saying in the next 5 years it might be down to 300,000. Still not going to be able to do it. Okay, let me sweeten the deal though. What if you were to go and be able to stay on the moon at a hotel for a couple days?
like the moon
like
B&B,
a
you know,
moon
it's like,
lunar B&B.
A lunar B&B.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
So-
count me in. Yeah.
what are we gonna do? Play a couple rounds of golf out there on the moon, you know, get in our lunar rover, kind of burn some
Yeah.
donuts around,
Yeah.
grab a couple moon rocks from my pockets, you know, so I can bring those back home.
That'll pay for your trip when you get back, man. Sell those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then
Oh.
they won't be worth anything because everyone and their brother will have them. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
you'll be, I guess, rich to start, but then, you know, if that's what you're betting on down the road, I just think it's
Andy Martin said
what,
he paid $250K, not a dime more. It's
Okay, well, we'll get it down to that price.
so Andy, hook us up. You give us half up front. We'll make sure we secure you a ticket.
yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
No, but
You can count on us. You can trust
Yeah.
us.
I just don't know what the intent of the whole civilian space exploration is, or I don't even think it's really been defined. Yeah, they could sit there and go, cool, go to the moon. All right, you know, hang out there for
I
a
do
bit.
believe a lot of people would do it.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
I mean,
do
to be
believe.
able to, like, you know, stamp that on their ego, go for it.
I believe a lot of people would do it. Yeah. That's unbelievable to see those things. Now the price tag of those vehicles. I mean, how many do they have? I mean, they each have one.
When they do like the space travel. So
Yeah.
Bezos, his group, they had what, 5? I think 5 people go up. Him and his brother were on there, and then I think they had 2 others. And they did. One of them was a giveaway, and the other one was an auction. And I think that seat went for, I'm going to get the number wrong, but I'm going to say like $28 million.
Yeah.
And the guy ended up not being able to go, so he let his son go. Yeah, he let his son go. But this is kind of the cool part of this. So Bezos donated that money to a whole bunch of different STEM outreach programs. So at least it went to, you know, I'm sure he put some in his pocket, but it
Spice
went
K9. Did they get any?
Oh my gosh, I wish. That would be
Yeah.
awesome.
Come on.
You know, I was thinking about doing it, but they weren't wearing their masks up there. I was like, count me out.
Right? What is that?
God,
Nobody
that's the
wearing
least of your
masks.
worries.
But are they doing any type of, because I mean, you look at the astronaut program, right?
Mhm.
It's not like they just grab somebody and go, hey, buddy, cool, you're going to be an astronaut today. There's a whole rigorous process that goes through.
Yes. Yeah. And we were talking prior to this. So I actually have a good friend that was, she's a Mars geologist from Caltech, and she was selected for this past astronaut program, and she was a candidate. She graduated. So she was selected for the Artemis mission. So she will be going to the moon, which is just so crazy.
Mhm.
But I know what they went through. I mean, they learned to fly fighter jets, right? And think of all the small logistics. Think about scuba diving, right? Like when you do rescue diver, if your buddy or someone that you're with starts freaking out, what's the rule? You knock them out, right?
Yeah.
So think about now being in space tourism, and you're on a spacecraft, and something starts going wrong, and you've got a bunch of untrained people for a very alien world. I mean, I wouldn't want to be up there with people that had just paid the money and then got the stamp, hey, and they've changed that, by the way. Now they're not called astronauts because people really got bent out of shape about that. I think
they were calling themselves astronauts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I think they're calling them like space travelers or something.
Yeah. I mean, because here's the thing, at least from what I remember, and again, dated from, you know, back in the 60s when that was a big thing, man, they're putting these guys through all these different tests, right? How much G's can you take? Because I forget the G force those rockets were putting out when they were sending them up to the moon and stuff like that, or just getting them into orbit, right? So just like you have a space traveler that now, let's say, isn't the most fit individual, but he's got fat pockets.
Yep. Exactly.
Little bit of G's behind, you know, maybe he drank a little too much, you know, the night before. Next thing you know,
yep,
he's got Ralph all in his helmet. Now what are you doing?
And then you hit 0 G's, and it's just like everywhere. And you're like, dude.
I'm just asking the questions. I don't know. So.
That is unbelievable.
Well, I will tell you both something that's kind of interesting. And whenever I do a lot of STEM outreach, because I love talking to people about science and just kind of bring in terms that everybody can kind of relate to. But I do a lot for kids, and the coolest thing I always tell kids is like, this generation of kids that is being born right now will most likely, if not maybe a couple, 20 or 30 years after, they're going to look at the moon and they're going to see city lights, just like you would see if you were on the moon and you look back at Earth. Like once you break that barrier, it's there, right? There'll be people will be talking about that time that, back in my day, the moon didn't have any lights on it.
Yeah. But just the logistics. I mean, think about the mere logistics alone. How many, and I'll just say rockets for lack of better terms, because I don't know what we're going to call these vehicles yet. We'll just say rockets. How much, rockets are you going to have to launch with how much payload, to sit there and bring that much infrastructure there. And
oh my gosh.
Keep it sustained. And I don't know that, how they're going to do their oxygen supply. How's that piece working out?
How about water? Do you know how expensive, when you look at launches, right? I did a workshop with JPL, pretty high level workshop where we developed a space mission from A to B, just teaching us kind of how to do it. And the most restrictive thing on a launch pad is mass, right? And water is heavy and you kind of need it.
Yeah.
But again, mass, you go back to matter. Well, matter can be neither created nor destroyed. So once you've got the water up there, as long as it doesn't, escape the tanks, you've got it, but it's getting the water there or making the water. And that's where geology comes in a little bit, because you can look at the elemental basics of water, right? Which is H2O, hydrogen and oxygen. Can you find any hydrogen and oxygen in the rocks? Yeah, oxygen's everywhere in rocks. So that's another piece of the puzzle that geologists come into, is taking rocks and either making breathable air or doing something with the atmosphere, which obviously on the moon you can't. Mars does have an atmosphere; it's CO2. So that's good. They don't really have a magnetic field though. So yeah, that's getting all of those supplies, and there's 3D printing now, right? So that's kind of the concept that we'll get up there and just 3D print.
Make stuff up there. Yeah.
But you still got to get there.
Well, you still got to get there, and you still got to get the material, right?
Exactly.
You can't 3D print the air or the lack thereof and have something.
Exactly.
So you just look at, and let's just look at last year. Man, our supply trains broke down like nobody's business.
Oh my gosh, tell me about it. Ammo, come on now.
Oh God.
We won't get started on that. But my point being, right? So you've got your, let's just say, lunar hotel at 75%, whatever that 75% is. And we can't get rockets up there to drop more stuff off. Or
dude, can you imagine what your mini bar bill is going to be at the end?
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
Just look at all that. I go, that's cool. But man, I would not want to sit there and go, what does the price tag of that take? Because you got to think, we're talking, you're almost talking space travel is an everyday deal.
Yep.
When back in our day, it was kind of like there was a certain progression. Typically, you got to join the Air Force, right? You had to be a fighter pilot. And then if you were lucky enough to be that fighter pilot, test pilot good enough, you might get picked for the astronaut program.
Yep.
And then you're kind of going from there. So it was a very select crew. Now it's just kind of like willy-nilly anybody. Come on.
It's like, hey, let me go online and buy a ticket.
You got big pockets. It's like dig in there and get you a ticket. So
I will say one good thing to kind of support, I guess, the private industry is they are doing something that's pretty revolutionary that NASA is not doing. And they've been successful with it, but they're actually reusing some of their boosters, some of their rocket boosters. So some of the pieces that are very expensive on these launch vehicles, they're actually literally able to bring them back down to Earth without they bring them back down before they exit the atmosphere so they don't burn up. So they're able to reuse those. All of NASA's rockets are one-time use and they're gone.
See, I didn't know that. I didn't know that they were still doing that. I thought we recovered them a lot of times from like the shuttle years.
Some of from the space shuttle time, you bet.
Yeah.
All those boosters, yeah. But the big rockets like the Atlas V and stuff, I mean, those things are beasts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Gone.
you weren't getting nothing except for the reentry vehicle. That was your only recovery you're getting back.
God,
Yep.
do you remember
You
how
guys,
big those Saturn V rockets were, or whatever
Oh,
those
dude.
things were?
dude, they're about to launch a Saturn V, or no, I'm sorry, an Atlas V from Kennedy. I think in the next couple days. Man, I would
Really?
love to be there to see one of those things launch.
Wow.
God, those
Anytime
things
you
are
have,
massive.
I know. So anytime you guys see those, obviously the larger the launch vehicle, the heavier the mass is. Just a little secret, but this is public information. You can look it up. Anytime you see an Atlas V launching, it typically is a DoD satellite that's going up, because DoD satellites are big.
Yeah.
They're really, really massive compared to a typical space mission.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What were you
those
gonna say,
I would
Rick?
love to
I'm
see
sorry,
one.
buddy. Did I cut you off? You were going to say something?
No, just talking as far as the rockets and all that other stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just because I know we were recovering. Because like when you look at the whole shuttle, because again, that was kind of our timeline, right? So we went
Yep.
from the Atlas Saturn rockets going, hey, that's cool. Watch the U.S. flag go on the moon. I guess we own that, you know.
It's ours.
Get some taxes from the aliens or whatever the case may
Yeah.
be. But if you think about it, right, the whole shuttle process and how that went through. So originally they had painted both the fuel tanks and the boosters, and then they finally realized that, hey, by us painting them, I forget how many thousands of extra pounds that was just wasted material. Now we won't paint them. Now we'll start trying to recover some of, that stuff. So
Yep.
it's, for those of us that have been kind of around that space exploration time, it's pretty cool to see where it's at
Yeah.
now. But
It's amazing.
again, just trying to wrap my head around the whole space travel. What are we getting out of it? I think once they define that a little better.
Yeah. Well, think about also, going back into the social stuff. What are the laws? What are the laws on the moon?
Yeah.
It's the Wild West.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
it's
technically the
maritime
law. No, the United States law, because there's a flag on there. That's United States property.
Yeah.
Of course.
Sorry, you guys were. Sorry, everybody else was second.
Hey, I thought that was
Yeah.
the whole premise of planting the flag.
I think though.
Absolutely.
I have a suspicion that the billionaires that first go to the moon will probably not be from the U.S.
Oh, damn.
I know. Ugh.
They'd be trespassing, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Yes.
So upon their reentry, I
Passport.
guess ICE will be there to pick them up to go, hey man, that was an illegal entry.
That is a good point. Do you
maybe
stamp
that's what
your
this-
passport when you come back?
I don't know. Well, I mean, that's got to involve Space Force now, right?
Yeah, you're gonna have some Space Force TSA guys.
But here's
any
the thing.
fruits, vegetables, or
Yeah, getting me rocks in there.
Give me your rocks. Give me all your rocks.
yeah. Oh, that's great. So what's next for you?
Oh my gosh. So I'm actually doing a little bit more mapping with the Mars with the Jezero stuff. And my gosh, just finished this PhD. PH done is where I want to be. That's the primary focus right now. Other than the fun stuff like doing tactical games and doing all the CrossFit and all that swimming and all that fun stuff. But that doing the little bit of mapping I have left for the Mars stuff is going to help the team out a lot. It's just really high resolution mapping on some kind of cool features that are close to the Delta front, and it's stuff the team is looking at sampling with the rover, so that can be pretty cool. But that's kind of where I am right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You ever done any stuff on the ancient structures that we have on this planet? You ever done any kind of testing from the geological side of the house, like how old it is and that kind of thing, what's it made of? And
are you talking about naturally occurring or human made?
No, human made.
I haven't done any of that. It would be, I mean, there's definitely some really interesting sites out there that would be cool to dive into and kind of apply our geologic dating and stuff to, but I haven't done any of that.
Yeah. Cool.
I'm just so fascinated by ancient civilizations, some of them were so like almost more complex than we are right now, and they just disappear.
Before we start to wrap this up, I did have one question that it slipped my mind earlier. The fact that I think that some of these big structures, has to be some kind of lost technology that was able to move those. I don't think it was, anything other than human beings, but we couldn't move some of these stones now. Do you think there's any do you have any answers for that? Or do you think it's just lost technology? And
So I actually,
aliens.
well, I have one that might kind of be a weird eye opener for the big stones in Egypt. So Egypt is a desert, right? It's super, super dry and sandy. It isn't now, of course, it's all, populated, but I was actually out in the field once and we were trying to move, not in Egypt, just here in the United States, but kind of a desert environment. We were trying to move some big equipment and we were like, man, this is not going to happen. This is like not a good CrossFit workout for the day.
Yeah.
And it just happened to rain a little bit that evening, a rare rain. So there was a little bit of water that got into the sand. And guess what happened? We could literally push that stuff with one hand.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So when you've got really compact sand that's in a desert that has been, it's not loose sand like the beach. It's like real, it's like concrete almost. And you get it a little bit wet, you can move stuff on it really fast. So my theory is Egyptians probably just put a little bit of water on some of that stuff.
So they know how to create the environment that would allow that stuff to be done. Yeah.
But to figure that out, again, it might have just been luck. It might have been some geologist out in the field in ancient Egypt and was like, hey, this works.
Yeah.
But
Some of
there's
them
always
stones are like 200 tons.
I know. But it's crazy because there's always some sort of little answer for that. We just need to figure them out. We don't know all of them.
Right. Unbelievable. Well, we
there you
really appreciate you coming here and being on the show. It was a lot of fun. And I know there's going to be 15 more questions that Rick and I are going to want to ask you after we get off. So
you know how to get a hold of me. So, and if anybody else has questions, we can put my Instagram or something right in the show notes or something.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And also you want to mention the shirt again and who that is and what you think about it?
Spikes Canine Fund. So Spikes Canine Fund was started by a good friend of mine, retired Navy SEAL, Jimmy Hatch. And they are doing such great things to protect our working canines, military and Leo. And they outfit the working canines with custom-made ballistic vests. And they also do heat sensors for the vehicles, just a little extra protection for the dogs. They do a lot of education for canine health, and they're doing a lot of really good things. So I can't talk them up enough. Huge supporter of them, and I know that every penny that they get is being put back towards those dogs. And spikescaninefund.org. Go hit them up, get some cool swag. There we go.
Awesome.
Yeah, any little bit helps. Even just kind of spreading the word about Spikes Canine, it really helps them out a lot, and they're doing great things.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you for your service. And I'd like to apologize for that Army-Navy game last year. But
oh my gosh, I was waiting.
We got another one coming up this year.
That's the jab. That's the jab right before we go, right?
Oh my gosh. Hey.
Navy's in a rebuilding year, so maybe you guys will be all right. Maybe.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah.
My parting words are beat Army.
Not gonna happen.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks guys.
And take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks for your service.
Wow. It was a lot of fun.
Dude. It's amazing the stuff you learn. It's like, really? A little bit of water, and then next I'm moving a 200-ton block. Got it. Yeah. So
a lot of great stuff that they're doing. And it's the mapping and all that other stuff. She's right. It's going to happen. There's going to be people all over this solar system. It's going to be unbelievable. It's going to be unbelievable. So, well, buddy, what a great show. And, again, thank our friends at Killcliff and Combat Flip Flops. Mm-hmm. And we'll be doing it again, pal.
Buddy.
All right, buddy. Take care, Rick. And see you next time.
You know it.